All right, chapter 12 of our book covers the human skeletal system, and we will be looking at sections 1 through 4, chapter 12. We're going to be answering the following questions. What are the functions of the skeletal system? Can you describe the structure of bones? What is the difference between the axial and the appendicular skeletons? And then what are the 3 types of joints and where might you find each of those joints in the human body? So first, the functions of the skeletal system are kind of varied. But we first want to define what we mean by skeleton because it's really common for like a common vernacular to limit the skeleton to just the bone. But when we're anatomically speaking about the skeleton, we're really looking at bone and the cartilage. So we're going to see a lot of cartilage within our joint systems and things like that, and those are all included within that skeletal structure of the human body. And together, the bone and the cartilage work together to perform the following functions: supporting the structure of the body. So we obviously would not be able to stand up. We'd be a big slimy blob. Providing points for muscles to attach, which allows the movement of the body. And we'll talk more about that in the next chapter when we look at our muscular system. Bones protect internal organs from trauma. So this is going to include things like our rib cage and our skull. So creating that hard structure around those really important organs, the heart, the lungs, and the brain that we want to keep from any serious harm. Bones also store minerals like calcium and phosphorus. So these are going to be able for our body to access those very quickly. And it also stores fat in our yellow bone marrow. So that's site of mineral and fat storage. And then lastly, it produces our blood cells, also done within the bone marrow, within the red marrow. So we'll see each of those as we look at the structure of our bones as well. Hopefully we remember from the discussion of tissues that bone is a type of connective tissue. The extracellular matrix secreted by bone cells is hard because of the large amount of calcium. And then the bone cell itself, which are all of these little nuclei, these are the actual bones the bone cells, osteocytes, bone cells. And we hopefully remember about connective tissue that one of its key characteristics is that the cells tend to be really, really spread apart, and there's a lot more extracellular matrix in between, and this is no exception. And that matrix just happens to be a hard solid rather than some of our other tissue types. Most bones have both what we call compact bone and spongy bone tissues. Compact bone, like we're going to see around the outside here, the outside of this long bone, is very dense and has very few spaces in between, so no hollow bits like we're going to see with spongy bone. Most compact bone surfaces, except where joints meet, are covered in a membrane called the periosteum. So because compact bone is surrounding this entire bone then is going to be the periosteum. And this is the layer that contains blood vessels and nerves and cells that specialize in cell growth and repair, which is really important because our bones are providing that structural support for the body. We need to be able to repair them very quickly if they're damaged. Spongy bone on the inside is kind of a lattice structure of bone with like lots of open spaces in between. And that kind of braces the bone from the inside. You can see they don't all run in the same direction. It's more of a random network. Having those many open spaces reduces the weight of the bone. Bird bones, for example, are made of mostly spongy bone, which makes them very light and makes flying possible. In humans, spongy bone is more common in our small, flat bones, like in the skull or near the ends of our long bones, like in this picture. And then the spongy bone of the ribs, pelvis, backbone, skull, sternum, and our long bone ends are filled with red marrow. Red marrow is that substance that makes all of those blood cells that we were talking about before. The cavity in the middle and the shafts of the long bones, like the femur, is filled with yellow marrow, which is a fatty tissue where bones store fat for later use within the body. This is fat that is not as accessible as like that we would find in our hypodermis. So this is more for long-term storage in the yellow marrow. The reason that bone has that reputation of being such a strong and sturdy tissue type is because the cells themselves are secreting that hard calcium and phosphorus-rich extracellular matrix, but they're also arranged in what we call an osteon, and this is that series of concentric circles around a focal point or a central canal. And having those osteocytes, so here's an osteocyte, here's arranged in those circles surrounding on each other, that gives bone an even stronger texture than if it was just osteocytes randomly placed and next to each other. So that osteon structure makes bone very, very strong. So what is the difference between the axial skeleton and the appendicular skeleton? That was one of our questions. And the human skeleton can really be divided into those two parts. So shown in blue here, we have our axial skeleton, which includes the skull, the vertebral column, and the rib cage. And then in red, in the second image, we have our appendicular skeleton, which includes the shoulders, the pelvis, and the limbs or appendages. The axial skeleton protects and supports internal organs. So our skull is protecting our brain, our rib cage is protecting the heart and the lungs, and the vertebral column is protecting the spinal cord. And then our appendicular skeleton are the pieces that are really going to allow for more movement and range of motion. And that's why the pelvis is included with the appendicular skeleton. It's very common for students to lump it in with the axial skeleton because it is kind of on that vertical axis. But because its primary function is to allow for movement, then we want to really include that with the appendicular skeleton. Adult humans have 206 bones that come in a wide variety of shapes and sizes. The shape and the size of bones is really another great example of form follows function that we will not have time to explore in as much depth this semester. So you can breathe a kind of big sigh of relief because I'm not going to be asking you to memorize and identify every human body bone. If you go on to take something like anatomy and physiology, then absolutely you might be doing that, but not today. So let's look at some of the joints, the places where bones meet. Joints are also called articulations, but whatever you call them, they can be either fibrous, cartilaginous, or synovial. Fibrous joints are held together with fibrous connective tissue, and they have no joint cavity, and most of them don't provide for much movement. So a good example of that would be the sutures between our skull plates, which are fibrous joints. No need for a range of motion there, but a nice protective layer of fibrous tissue to keep everything on the inside. Second, we have cartilaginous joints, which are held together by cartilage. And this type of joint is found between the vertebrae and in our pelvis. So we probably recall from our discussion of cartilage as a tissue that it's not vascularized, so no blood vessels. And because of that, no nutrients will reach it very quickly. So not have a high capacity to repair itself if it's damaged. And that's really why so many people suffer from things like degenerative back problems. As that cartilage between the vertebrae wears down and is lost, it's not replaced, which causes the vertebrae to rub against each other. And hopefully remember that periosteum layer carrying those blood vessels and nerves, that means that those are going to be pinched, and that's what causes so much pain. It's important to have cartilage in the pelvic joint, though, because as pregnant women get closer to giving birth, they release a hormone that relaxes those joints and allows the pelvis to widen. So one of the advantages of those cartilaginous joints is that they're also a tiny bit more flexible up and down the spinal column. However, most joints in the body are this third type, synovial, and these are our freely movable joints. These guys still have cartilage, but it's a much, much thinner layer, and it's going to be found on surrounding the parts where the bones may actually meet. And they also have what we call the synovial membrane, and the synovial membrane secretes synovial fluid to lubricate the joint. And so there's actually fluid that is preventing those bones from hitting and rubbing up against each other. And then the entire joint is reinforced with ligaments. So that example of dense connective tissue. The ligament itself would not be included in what we're defining as the skeleton. That's going to just be holding it, and then we'll see tendons that are going to be connecting our bone or our muscles, and that is what we will look at next, is our muscular system.